So if I listen to Pete Rubish, who deadlifted 900 plus pounds, talk about the deadlift technique, you best believe your boy's taking notes if I care about the deadlift.
So some of you guys may have seen Geoffrey Schofield's video, Should Natural Lifters Listen to Steroid Users? And I thought this was a really good video. I've been a big fan of Jeff for a while now. He's got really good content and been a great resource for the community overall, the fitness community, because he's a straight shooter. He's lifetime natural, drug-free. He cut down to like 194 a couple months back, looked amazing. It looked like he was sauced to the gills, but just shows, what can be done when you get very, very lean. And he's definitely someone I would look up to as a natural lifter. I think he's got a great physique. He's got great information. So this video, I'm going to kind of touch on his video, the things he said, and the points he made. And I'm going to tell you if I agree, what I disagree with, all the things. So one of the main first points he made was steroids changed the training process. And this is definitely true. How I trained when I was enhanced is different than how I train now. So those of you, most of you may know my backstory. I've been lifting for 18 years. I've been competitive powerlifter, 2,100 pound total. I was on anabolic steroids for 9 years, and now I've been off for 3 years. And when I was competitive powerlifter, hitting like a 770 squat, 485 bench, 920 pound deadlift, most of my training was geared around those main lifts. There wasn't much isolation work. There wasn't any real hypertrophy work. I wasn't doing curls for the most part, push downs, not really any of that bodybuilding hypertrophy isolation work. And I still was massive. Like I was 250 pounds, 255 pounds most of the time. Walking around at that weight and just built like a house. And there's examples over the web, pictures and such. And I had really good arms, massive traps, a really good build for not doing isolation work. Like I could literally rely on the main lifts as the volume, and that would build me up. It's people would always ask, what do you do for your neck and traps? And I was just like, I just deadlift. Like I deadlift heavy. And the repetitive nature of the heavy deadlifts, deadlifting 600, 700, 800 pound range for reps, that built some pretty big traps and a neck with PEDs. Now, there's nothing I could do, even with direct training, to stimulate that same effect and build that same degree of trap growth and neck growth. Even if I trained them and isolated them to a huge extent, I couldn't achieve the same size. So obviously steroids do change the training process to a pretty significant extent. And he kind of made that point where like you can grow not training to failure, not much volume, all these things, and that's entirely true. You can even maintain a really impressive physique on just TRT. And that's 100% true. One of the points he made was around injuries. So when you're on anabolic steroids, your tendons and joints and such cannot keep up with the rate of growth and strength building of the muscles, basically. So you're much more susceptible to injuries. And this is true. There were countless muscle tears, hamstring tear, lat tear, glute tear, outer quad tear, adductor tear. These things were just part of the game. Like pec tears probably had like a dozen of them. I mean, it's just part of the game of anabolics. Like you get so strong that your body just can't keep up. Injuries are inevitable, I feel like, to a degree for anyone pursuing strength. If you're doing bodybuilding, you can get away from not getting injured for the most part, I think. But heavy compound lifts, heavy deadlifts, heavy bench, heavy squats, these eventually lead to injuries in everybody. It's just much more prominent for those on anabolic steroids and on that side of the fence. So it's just, that's 100% a thing. Now, he did say he didn't think a pump was as big of a thing for natural lifters. And I can't call myself a natural lifter, first of all. I've only been off stuff for 38 months now. 38, 39 months I've been off. So I'm drug-free, but I'm not natural. I took anabolic steroids for 9 years. I've made this very clear. Now, I honestly think the pump is pretty significant from my experience with growth. So now that I'm not on anything, it's been over 3 years, I do tons of isolation work. I do high volume for arms and all in chest and all that sort of stuff. And I've noticed that I can still get a pretty good pump. So the pump is maybe 80%, in my opinion, This is a rough estimation of what it was when I was on anabolics. No, I cannot get the pump I got on D-Ball. D-Ball gave a ridiculous pump, better than anything else. Even Tren, Anavar, all this stuff. The pumps were insane, obviously, yes. But I feel like I still get a pretty ridiculous pump now when I do high volume isolation work, close to failure, very high reps. I'm talking 20, 25 rep sets for sets of 10. Like, I get a crazy pump. And I do feel like this is translated very well to growth. My arms have blown up. My upper body in general is blown up from this methodology. So I do somewhat disagree with him there. So I think a pump in some ways stems from high sodium intake. I take in a lot of sodium, particularly the night before. So I'm loading sodium basically before I go to bed. I'm eating not the cleanest of foods. I eat pretty clean throughout the day, and then in the evening I eat a lot of not so clean food, more processed foods, and I think that does affect the pump. I think if you're eating more clean food, there's less of a pump. So I agree with like 90% of that. Just the pump thing I do think is significant and something you should try to aim for if you want to grow. I'm 205 right now, and I've seen huge progress from like chasing the pump essentially. His second point was genetics equals steroids essentially is what a lot of people say. He disagrees with this. I disagree with this. Genetics are an overplayed excuse, which he got to. He showed a picture of himself at like 25. I don't know how old he is now, but he was just skinny. He was just a skinny guy at 25. And I do think genetics are an overrated card that is played, used as an excuse. Now, obviously, yes, there are guys who are more gifted. A Russell Ori, which I'm going to make a video about his blood work probably next week, or this week even, and what I think of that. But Russell Ori is clearly a genetic specimen. Some of these guys are clearly genetic specimens, but I think it is an overplayed card where it's used as a self-sabotaging mechanism. It's you work with what you got, guys. Like, you work with what you got. I was built for deadlift more than bench. My bench, by comparison, lags way behind deadlift. But you work with what you got. I've got longer arms. It's just part of the deal. So we have to work with what we got. My testosterone levels right now, 317 nanograms per deciliter. That's not ideal, but I'm not using it as an excuse like, oh, my test is pretty low and now I can't achieve the gains I could make. Like, screw it. You gotta work with it. I'm not gonna use it as an excuse. I'd rather have my testosterone be 600, but that's not gonna happen right now. So you can't use this stuff as excuses. You have to be careful about that. We're all on our own journey. Focus on yourself. Focus on yourself, bettering yourself, and being the best you can be. So totally agree with that. Number 3, people downplay the impact of steroids. They do, no doubt. Can I come anywhere close to a 2,100 pound total without steroids? Absolutely not. I got to 700, a 700 pound deadlift, drug free, on 2 different occasions. When I was Lifetime Natural, when I was 19, I deadlifted 700. And then drug free last December, I deadlifted 705. So yes, that can be done. My bench was 375. So there are numbers you can get to without steroids. But with them, I was at a 485 bench and a 920 deadlift. So yes, it's a huge gap. It's clearly numbers that were out of reach, a physique that was out of reach by a long shot without them. I'll never downplay that. I think you can get to really respectable numbers and a really good physique without them. I feel like I've proven that now with what I'm doing. The numbers aren't outlandish. They're nothing. They're attainable for most people. I think even a 600 pound deadlift is attainable for most people if they work towards that. A lean physique, a lean built physique from isolation movements and lots of cardio is attainable for most people. So I think we cannot downplay anabolics. So I think I'm a good example of this because I've been on both sides of the coin. I don't know too many people out there who have been on both sides of the coin where they took stuff and they are truly drug free now off TRT even. I'm not on TRT. I'm not on nothing. I'm on vitamin D3. I'm on vitamin B complex. I'm on apple cider vinegar. Like, that's what I'm on. Okay, so I think that example, there's not many examples out there, but I'm being on both sides of the coin, they definitely help. You can still hit decent numbers without them. That's what I want to get at. It's the same thing with the genetics excuse. It's like you can hit decent numbers, but they're definitely not going to be anywhere close to what they were with Tren. A 920 deadlift is not a 705 deadlift. That's 200 pounds. A 375 bench, and I did hit 391 at one point, drug-free, since I've come off. That's now 485. That's a 100-pound difference. So there are big differences. Squat, I've never come close to 770 drug-free. So you got to keep that in mind. So number 4, what really matters? So I think, you got to take things with a grain of salt, obviously, when you're listening to a enhanced lifter, if you're not. And even you guys who are just doing TRT, you got to be careful listening to like a bodybuilder or a elite powerlifter who's taking way more than you. Like, it's a different ball game. When you're at this top level of competition, you're going to do whatever it takes to get better, to win, to be the best you can be. I was in that mindset. So it really does come down to taking things with a grain of salt. And there's stuff you can learn, but obviously the methodologies and training is somewhat different. I've coached guys for 11 years. I've coached drug-free. I've coached TRT guys. I've coached guys on full cycles. I've coached competitive powerlifters, and I've coached guys who just want to get stronger. So I've seen all different sides of the coin. And Jeff is right that you have to learn how to break through these plateaus when you are drug-free. You can't. And honestly, there's a huge point of diminishing return with dosages, but you can't necessarily rely on that as much, which I did when I was on it. I would be like, I'm going to change it up. I'm going to take trend and do that sort of thing to break through a plateau. But even that, at some point on drugs, you'll plateau. So a lot of this comes down to years in the game, experience, learning the body. I'm 32 years old now. Been doing this 18 years. Like, I've trained hundreds of clients. I've seen a lot of things. I've been on the juice. I've come off the juice. I've had to do it both ways. So I have a pretty realistic idea of expectations and what you have to do. And you have to find that for yourself through trial and error. So I appreciate you guys watching the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. Check out my 12-week deadlift program in the description, coaching, all that sort of stuff. And I appreciate all of you viewers and all those supporting the channel. Thanks, guys. I will keep the high-quality content coming, meant to help you become a better man.